Hello, I'm Mr. Hutchings, and you're listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Today, we're going to kick off Unit 6 of the AP World History program, The Consequences of Industrialization, from 1750 to 1900. Our AP themes will be governance, economic systems, technology and innovation, social interactions and organization, and finally, environmental impacts. Our historical reasoning skill will be causation, comparison, and continuity and change over time. By the late 18th century, machines were transforming how goods were made. By the late 19th century, these machines had transformed the world itself. Industrialization did not remain a domestic economic change. It reshaped global power, redrew borders, uprooted millions of people, and produced new forms of domination and resistance. Unit 6 asks us to confront a difficult but essential historical truth. Industrial growth created wealth, but it also produced empire, inequality, and conflict. Technological change provided the foundation for the transformations between 1750 and 1900. Industrial economies demanded raw materials, new markets, and secure trade routes. Competition among industrializing states intensified. Britain, France, Russia, and later the United States and Japan sought to expand their influence beyond their borders. Older empires, such as the Spanish and Portuguese, declined. New imperial powers rose. Colonies were no longer just sources of prestige, they became economic necessities. European powers tightened control over existing colonies, as Britain did in India. They also expanded into new regions, most dramatically in Africa, where nearly the entire continent was colonized within a few decades. This was not random expansion. It was a structural consequence of industrial capitalism. Why might industrial economies feel pressured to expand beyond their borders? Because industrial production requires steady access to raw materials, access to labor, and steady access to markets, which expansions help secure. Imperial expansion required explanation. European leaders and European intellectuals turned to ideology. Social Darwinism framed global inequality as natural and inevitable. Religious arguments cast imperialism as a civilizing mission. Racial hierarchies were presented as scientific truth. These justifications did not cause imperialism on their own, but they did legitimize imperialism. Industrial power created the capacity to dominate. Ideology created the moral cover. Imperialism did not go unchallenged. Across the 19th century, resistance movements emerged as expressions of nationalism, religious renewal, and local autonomy. These movements took many forms: armed rebellion, reform movements, and the creation of buffer or peripheral states. Examples appear throughout Unit 6. Tupac Amaru's II's rebellion against Spanish rule in Peru, resistance to British control in India, Samurai Touré's prolonged struggle against French forces in West Africa, and Balkan independence movements as the Ottoman Empire weakened. Resistance did not always succeed in the short term, but it laid the ideological and organizational groundwork for 20th century decolonization. Why might resistance increase as imperial control expands? Because imperial rule disrupts local authority, disrupts economies, and disrupts identities, creating pressure for collective response to imperialism. Industrialization also transformed migration. New transportation technologies made long distance movement faster and cheaper. Economic opportunity drew millions to industrial cities and to overseas colonies. At the same time, coercion remained central to global labor systems. Slavery declined in the 19th century, but indentured servitude expanded. Workers from India and China were transported across the world to build railroads, work on plantations, and staff colonial economies. Migration reshaped societies on both ends. Those regions which sent migrants lost labor. Those regions which received migrants experienced demographic change, cultural blending, and social tension. Migration was not simply a movement, it was reorganization of human life on a global scale. Unit 6 is not a list of empires or wars. It is an investigation into causation. Industrialization caused imperial expansion. Imperial expansion caused resistance. Economic change caused migration. Migration caused social transformation. Unit 6 asks students to trace those chains of cause and consequence across regions and cultures. The unit also emphasizes comparison. Why did imperialism look different in Africa than in Latin America? Why did Japan become an empire while China was carved into spheres of influence? Why did some resistance movements succeed while other resistance movements failed? In Unit 6, you will examine the ideological rationales for imperialism, the expansion and consolidation of state power, indigenous responses to empire, global economic restructuring, patterns and effects of migration. And finally, you will examine how historians evaluate the consequences of imperialism. Each topic builds on the same core idea. Industrialization reshaped the world, but not equally and not peacefully. Unit 6 challenges comfortable narratives of progress. It asks us to see industrialization not only as innovation, but as disruption, not only as growth, but as imbalance. If industrialization created both opportunity and domination, how should societies evaluate the legacy of industrialization? By recognizing industrialization's material achievements while also confronting the human and political costs industrialization imposed would probably be the best way to examine this unit. I'm Mr. Hutchings. I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode. And as always, continue to study history. It matters.